Well, of all the gold recovery systems in the world available to hobby prospectors like me, the Dream Mat system is perhaps one of the world's most popular. It's used in heavy industry, it's used out on the creek, everywhere around Australia. For all those people who have agonised about how to best set up their Dream Mat system out on the creek, stick around, you might learn something today. So I'm going to be testing 3 lots of pay dirt, each one with 1/4 gram of gold, and I'm going to be running the cleanup sluice at different operating angles to see how much gold is being blown out, if any. So a lot of people swear by the Dream Mat setup, and they say it's one of the most tolerant systems out there. In other words, you can run it in low water, you can run it in really high water, you can run it when it's almost submerged. What about operating angles? Let's see which angle is best for the Gold Rat Dream Mat cleanup sluice. And here's hoping it might inform your use of the Dream Mat out on the creek. So just been having a bit of a scout around online, and it seems there are lots of opinions about how best to run this sluice. Okay, so for this first test, I've decided to go with the recommended angle, which is around 9 degrees. It'd be nice having mats that look like that all the time, wouldn't it? Interestingly, the gold is very obvious in that first line of cells there. If you ever had pay dirt this rich on the creek, you'd be digging some very big holes for a long while. So for the third and final test, we'll go to the aggressive end of the scale, setting it at around 11 degrees, which is right at the upper limit. So we should see fewer concentrates collecting in the sluice, more getting washed out. But will we see the same gold capture rate? Okay, third test done. With the sluice set at 11. You can see definitely still gold at the top, down into the second lot of cells there, but look, really not that much in the way of concentrate, so that more aggressive angle is definitely blowing more out. Yeah, most of the gold is still in that first line of cells. There's perhaps a little bit more in the second line. There's a bit there in the third. I notice there's actually even a lot further down. Just a little bit there, which suggests that it's getting pushed a lot further down. So there's our 3 lots of sluice concentrates. Lowest angle, perhaps the most concentrates, 9 degrees, perhaps the recommended angle. 11 degrees more aggressive, fewer concentrates. Now, I won't bore you with the panning process. I'll fast forward to the results. And just like that. Now, I just panned out those 3 samples, and now I've gone through the tailings, and what I've found is that there's hardly any gold blown out in the tailings. Let's have a look. So that's, yeah, hardly lost any gold out of those 3 samples. So in weighing up those 3 different samples, will I be able to tell which one that gold has come from? Or does it mean that each of those 3 angles, 7, 9, and 11, is perfectly fine? Okay, first test, we'll call that 0.243, just a shade under the 0.25 that went in. All right, so the 7-degree angle, 0.251, interesting. I'm gonna have to call that 100% recovery at 7 degrees. Interesting. And for the 11-degree angle, I'm going to call that 100% again. So what does that mean? Well, it means that the recovery rate on all three tests was exceptionally high. It's a very tolerant system. So between 7 degrees and 11 degrees, there was almost no appreciable difference. So that's my total recovery out of the 0.75. Do I need to run a more extreme test to push the limits? In chatting with Dustin from Goldrat, the Australian manufacturers of the DreamMat Sluice system, he suggested that they're actually getting really good results at running the sluice at up to 15 degrees, so why not try that? And he suggested also the micromat with the smaller cells is really good at that angle to capture fine gold. So we're raising the stakes. Hopefully I don't regret this. 2.5 grams of gold going into the pay dirt to run our extreme DreamMat test. Isn't that the idea with engineering testing? You push things until they break. Anyway, hopefully we don't break anything. 2.5 grams of gold. So I've set up the cleanup sluice with the micromat, which is the smallest DreamMat offering. And because of that, I think I might classify my dirt down one step further to kitchen strainer size. Ten times the gold going in the dirt. Well, that's a beautiful thing. Not only can you see how much gold has been collected, you can see where it's been collected and how it's migrated down the sluice. I doubt I'll ever see a mat like that again. So right down at the tail end of the mat, I can see a little piece in there. Another one in there. Another one in there. That's one right in the very last cell there, with some more pieces further up. Bulk of it in the top third of the mat, pretty much where you'd expect to see it. We can say one thing for sure, at that angle with that micro mat, you're collecting virtually no concentrates. Plenty of gold in there, but look, there's hardly any concentrates compared to the other mats. But I do have one other problem, and that is all this gold still trapped in the mat, despite repeated rinsing. From experience, these mats can be a little bit stubborn releasing the gold, particularly when they're new. You have to give them a really good scrub with some soapy water beforehand. And even though I've done that a few times with this mat, it's still hanging on to the gold. So this is how much gold the mat held on to. So if you're ever missing gold out of your cleanups, go back and check your mat. So here was the gold that I recovered from the mat, the micro mat, and here was the gold I recovered from the tailings. So you blew a little bit out the bottom of the mat, retained. Quite a lot. Out of the 2.5 grams I put into the cleanup sluice, it captured 2.4 of that. So that's how much was blown out of the dream mat out of 2.5 grams of gold. Well, if you add those two together, not quite coming up back with the 2.5 grams that I put in. So it suggests to me that I got to go through my tailings yet again and maybe check that black mat, see if it's hanging on to a little bit more fine gold. Anyway, I think the bottom line with this was that even at 15 degrees incline, that micro mat from Dream Mat did a really good job at holding on to super fine gold. So don't be afraid to push the Dream Mat hard. Don't be afraid to up the angle a little bit more than you might feel comfortable with. And at the end of the day, if it allows you to clear more material when you're on the creek by running it at a slightly steeper angle, that just means you can put more material down it over the course of the day, and whatever losses you might have from having a sharper angle, you might make up for it in being able to process more material. Anyway, just a thought.